there was a man who had some legal issues that he was facing. And so he decided it may be time to hire a lawyer. But not having a lot of financial resources, he wanted to kind of ask some questions first. So he found a lawyer that he knew, and he went into his office, and he asked him, so how much would it cost to ask you a few questions? The lawyer responded, well, I charge $400 for 3 questions. The man thought about that, and he said, gosh, that's a lot of money. It's a little bit over my budget. Is there any way that you could come down just a little bit in cost? The lawyer responded, nope. And what's your 3rd question? It'll take a while. If you're a guest, we're so glad that you're joining us here today. If you're watching online, we're glad that you're here. We've been in a series called Jesus. And we've been walking through what it means to be the life, the ministry, and the teaching of Jesus. And what does that story have to do with anything? Here's what I'm saying. Sometimes we have the experience of sticker shock, where we think we're going to buy something and we think we're going to get goods and services, and maybe it's a little bit more than we thought it might be. Maybe you find that out as you're buying it. Maybe sometimes you find out after you've bought it. Maybe sometimes you get something you bought home and say, you know what, I didn't really, for what I paid for this, I'm not getting my money's worth. Anybody else ever have that experience? Okay. It happens sometimes in life. And so what we're talking about here is the first part of this is we're talking about what it means to follow Jesus, how we can be a follower of Jesus Christ. And we've been talking about the first act of this is Act 1 is follow me. We've talked about getting baptized, discipleship, the miracles, the teaching of Jesus. And so now we're going to move into a next section. I'm calling it Act 2, and we're calling it the cost of discipleship. See, as we look at the life of Jesus, we've really kind of broken it down into 3 different places, 3 different acts, if you will. So this week, we're beginning Act 2, what's called the cost of discipleship. And as you know, in any trilogy, the most powerful act is always the second act. In any play, the most powerful act is always the second act. If you remember the great Star Wars trilogy, right? The second act was The Empire Strikes Back. That's where Darth Vader revealed that he was actually Luke Skywalker's father. It was a powerful moment, and it changed the entire series, didn't it? You may remember The Lord of the Rings, the great book, and the movie series that went with that too, The Two Towers, and how that movie really kind of pivoted the whole series. And then, of course, the greatest movie trilogy of all time, The Mighty Ducks. Okay, maybe not. That was just me. But here's my point in saying this. This second act that we're starting today through the life of Jesus is really kind of a pivot point in the life and the ministry of Jesus. And it's going to pull from the first act that we just went to, but it's really going to set up the dramatic conclusion that we're going to come to when it comes to Act 3. And so with that as well, we've been mentioning that throughout this series, this is not just come on Sunday and listen, although we want you to do that. If you're watching online, we're glad that you're here. But there's really kind of 3 pieces to that. Sunday is kind of our episode drop. We're starting a new episode today. But in addition to that, we have a weekly reading. And if in your room here, on your chairs here, we have your updated list. We went through the first act. This is your second act reading list. It starts tomorrow. And as you see, it goes all the way through March 26th. Every day, Monday through Saturday, there's going to be a reading from the 4 Gospels. The 4 dudes, we're calling them. Who are the 4 dudes? Good job, church. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the life of Jesus. We're going through this. And so this is what Act 2 starts the reading. This is not only you can have this as well, we are also going to post it on our website every day. There's going to be a web entry for you to read with these listing. It'll be a link directly to YouVersion where you can click on it and read the passage that way. We're also going to put it on social media as well. So any way that you can do it to get that. So Sunday, come and listen to the episode. Monday through Saturday, do your reading, but there's a third element to that that's so important, and we talked about our discussion groups, where we really want you to be in community with other people, talking about this. And every Monday at 7 o'clock, we have a group that meets here for the guys, and then Tuesdays at 6:30, we have another group that meets here for the ladies. Again, if those days and times don't work for you, let me know. Let's see what does work for you, because we want you to be part of this and walking on this journey as we go through this second act of Jesus. And church, I just want to say again, I'm so proud of you. I know for many of you, you've been doing this every single day. And it's fun on the website because you can see how many people are actually going there and reading it. And it's been fun to see those numbers go up. And that doesn't count the number of people who are just using the list and doing it on their own. So thank you for doing that, church. And those discussion groups have been going so well. People have been talking about that. Great questions and all those things. So in your Bibles, I want you to go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew 14. If you don't have a Bible, we'd love to give you one. You can also go to YouVersion. It's a free app on any smartphone or device. You can download it right now, and talks about Matthew 14. And last week, I kind of set you up, and I said there's kind of a dramatic moment that happened. And I kind of set you up because I didn't tell you what it was, because I said you need to read it. And so if you did your reading, which I hope you did yesterday, you learned this dramatic event that really shifted the life and the ministry of Jesus, and that was the murder of John the Baptist. And notice we talked about John the Baptist at the beginning was a powerful relative of Jesus, a powerful prophet at the time to help Jesus get raised up. Many of the disciples that were disciples of John became disciples of Jesus, but yet John's life was taken from him. And so that was a dramatic shift for them. And I think for a lot of times, when John's death happened, a lot of the disciples probably looked at that and said, okay, what do we got ourselves into? You know, it's fun to see the miracles of Jesus. It's fun to see the healings of Jesus. It's great to hear the teachings of Jesus. But man, if they went after John the Baptist and John the Baptist was murdered, what does that mean for us? And that was a powerful moment. So in Matthew, we're going to look at it in Matthew chapter 14, and I'm going to start in the 12th verse. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. And church, don't miss this. Jesus struggled with that moment. Jesus just learned that one of his closest companions, his relative, had been murdered by the King Herod. And hopefully you read that story. I won't go into it if you didn't go back and read it. But I think for Jesus, not only was there an emotional part of that too as well, I think it was kind of a reminder that this is what Jesus was here to do. Because see, Jesus knew they were coming for him. Jesus knew that his end was going to be the same as John the Baptist. And that was a powerful moment in the life of Jesus. And here's why I think this is important, why we understand this. I think sometimes as believers in Jesus, sometimes we can over-spiritualize things. I wonder if some of the disciples came to Jesus and tried to comfort him and said things like sometimes we say, oh, well, at least we know he's in a better place. At least we know he's not in prison anymore. At least we know he's not suffering anymore. And church, I don't want to downplay any of that. I think all of that is absolutely true, and I think Jesus would agree with that. But in that moment, that's not what Jesus needed to hear. Jesus knew that. Jesus created that. Jesus had some time. Can I just say it? It stunk. Jesus was hurting. Jesus was missing his friend. And if Jesus had those same feelings and those same emotions, how much more do you and I need to be okay with that too? And we need to just take a time and just say, listen, it really stinks that this guy was in this place and something really bad happened to him. And my friend is now dead. And we need to have that same kind of emotions too sometimes. We need to have our faith, but we need to be okay with that. Let me help you with something. And this is going to feel like a left turn, but I think it's going to help because this is a really big idea I don't want us to miss. And I don't want us to blow past this idea. We know that Jesus lived a life. We know that Jesus was fully God and fully man, part of the Trinity. What that means is Jesus experienced everything that you and I experienced. Jesus experienced hunger. Jesus experienced pain. Jesus experienced grief. We just talked about that as well. But here's something that we don't think about a lot, unless you're a middle school boy, which I kind of am. Did you know that Jesus went to the bathroom? Okay? Just like all the rest of us, right? Jesus had to go, and sometimes he'd be in a crowd, and he have to go away. I think it's because he had to pee. I'll just be honest with you. I think he did. Again, I'm not trying to be silly here, but just think about it for a second. Do you know Jesus pooped? Okay? Jesus did. He did it. And where am I going with this? Because Jesus had a physical body. And in the same way, God designed our physical body, didn't he? Jesus actually did this. Think about how this works. Our physical body gets hungry. Our physical body gets tired. So when we're hungry, we take food in, we take drink in. Our body, through the miracle of what God designed us, processes all the food and all the drink, takes out the nutrients, the vitamins that we need for our muscles and for our bones, and then there's some leftover stuff, isn't there? And God designed our bodies to get rid of that stuff. And we call that like pee and poop, okay? It's just fun to say in church. I just want to keep saying it because it's fun to say, right? Here's what I want you to understand about our physical bodies, and don't miss this. Where am I going with this? The same thing is true with our emotional bodies and our spiritual bodies as well. We're in this world, and we're in a fallen and broken world. And sometimes there's things that we have to take in, and sometimes we have to process our bodies and the things that happen with that. And can I just say it? We need to let go of those things sometimes too. Because let's go back to my bathroom analogy for just a second, okay? When you got to go, there's really only 3 choices that you have, okay? Think about this. When you got to go to the bathroom, you can hold it, okay, for a while. And sometimes we need to do that, right? Sometimes we need to hold that. Part of maturity is learning how to control that. But after a while, you got to go, right? You remember that commercial we had on TV? Got to go right now. Anybody remember that, right? It made you, every time you watch that commercial, you got to go to the bathroom. Some of you probably need to go right now, right? Got to go. You got to go. You can hold it for a while, but it won't. Here's what happens, though. The second choice we have is if you hold it too long, what happens? You lose it. Little kids do this all the time. Sometimes happens to grown-ups too, right? If you hold it too long, you lose it. Can we just say that's not pretty, is it? It stinks. It's not very fun. It smells. Same thing emotionally, isn't it? If you hold it too long, if you hold it in too long, you're going to lose it. And it's not going to be pretty. So what do we need to do with our emotions? Just like Jesus did and just like our physical bodies, sometimes we need to take an emotional bathroom break. Jesus got on a boat. He went on a lake and was alone for a while. Sometimes in life, we need to just take a moment. We need to go by ourselves. We need to empty that yuck, that junk that comes out. We need to just get rid of it. And then we come back, we wash our hands, and we go back to our lives, church. That's what we need to do. That's what Jesus did. How much more do you and I need to do that? And that's what he's doing right now. Matthew chapter 14, verse 13. But look at what happened in verse 13. On hearing this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. Now, I just want to paint a picture of this for you as we're walking through this road. Jesus found out that John the Baptist was murdered. He needed to take an emotional bathroom break. So he got on a boat and he went out in a lake just to be alone by himself because he knew he needed to do that. That's powerful. There's a group of people on the shore. It's important to note this was the largest crowd to date that had come around Jesus. It was a massive group of people. And when it talks about going out on the sea, it's the Sea of Galilee. Think about this for a second, that we're out. There's approximately about 14,000 people looking at Jesus right now. Think of this as the entire community of Yankton. Think of the entire community of Yankton, go out to Lewis and Clark, and we see Jesus on the shore. Jesus gets in a little boat, and he starts crossing the lake. We all are standing there, we're like, hey, there's Jesus, and he's just going over there. They can see where he's at, but they can't get to him. You got the picture in your mind? This is what's going on. And so the people say, hey, you know what we should do? We should go around the lake, get to the other side, so when Jesus gets out of the boat, we'll all be there waiting for him. That's what's going on here, okay? Now, keep in mind what we just said. Jesus needed some time by himself. He's in a boat. He's doing that time. He's going across the lake. I'm pretty sure he probably saw the crowd. I'm pretty sure he saw what the people were doing. Maybe he had the thought that I might have. Maybe I should turn the boat around and just kind of mess with them and just take a little extra time. Maybe he did. Maybe he circled around the lake a little bit to take some extra time. But how would you respond in that situation? Look, Jesus landed and saw a large crowd. And then he said, get away from me, you people. Can I have some peace and quiet? Okay, I made that part up. That's not what Jesus actually said. That's what I might say in that situation, right? I'm on this boat. I'm trying to get away. This whole crowd of people are following me around. But that's not what Jesus said. And I want you to look at how Jesus actually responded. And here's what I want you to know. This is why I love Jesus so much. This is why, if you're not a follower of Jesus, I think you should be. Look at how my Jesus responded. Here's the real Matthew 14:14. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. Jesus had just had the darkest moment in his life to that point. Jesus had to take a spiritual, emotional bathroom break, get out on the boat, get away from the crowds, spend some time. And when he landed on the shore, all those people that he thought he left behind had walked around and they were standing there waiting for him. And my tendency would be, man, I'm not ready for this. I don't want to deal with this right now. But that's not what my Jesus said. My Jesus looked at those people and he had compassion on them. Now, if you were here for Act 1, I'd encourage you to go back and watch week 3 if you weren't. We talked about that word compassion. And I said, words matter. And that word compassion in Greek is the word, see if you remember it, splagnizoma. It's going to be on the screen behind me. Splagnizoma. Look at somebody and say, splagnizoma. It's just a great word to say, isn't it, right? And what we talked about that word, it's not just like, oh, I feel sorry for him. Like it just grabbed Jesus in his gut. He just saw those people, and he was just moved emotionally. It might have been the same experience maybe some of you had when AJ was up here talking. I know it was for me when I heard about what's going on with him and how it just kind of grabs you in your gut, and you're like, oh, it just drives. That's what Jesus saw. Jesus saw these people, and he had that compassion for them. And so he started doing what Jesus did. He started ministering to them. He started healing them. He started showing compassion to them. Again, think about the size of this crowd. This is probably 10 to 14,000 people. It's probably pretty emotionally exhausting. And something happened that set up what actually happened next. Here's what happened in verse 15. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place. It's already getting late. Send the crowd away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Again, Jesus has come to this remote place. It's away from the towns. It's away from the village. There's all these people that are here seeing him, and there's no place for them to eat. And the disciples said, listen, it's time. We got to let these guys go. They've got to go. They've got to get some food. There's all these people. We need to take care of this. And how Jesus responded to that is going to be so important. Look at what happens in verse 16. Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And the disciples said in verse 17, "We here only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. Now there's 2 things that I want to take out of that verse. Again, I've told you, as you're reading God's word, as you're doing your readings, when you come along something, write some questions down. Write what God says to you. I got 2 things from this passage that I'm going to unpack for you that I want to share for you. Here's the first one. There are thousands of people in this crowd. We'll later learn that there was 5,000 men, but that didn't include the women and children. That's why most scholars think it was between 10 to 14,000 people. Are you telling me out of thousands of people, the only food that was available was 5 loaves and 2 fish? Really? Are you kidding me? And John will go on to tell us that they actually found that because there was a little kid. There's a little boy there that says, "Hey, I got this," and they gave it to him. They said, "Jesus, this is all the food we have." Now, let's play this out for a second. And this is a crowd participation. We're in church. You got to be honest. How many of you have ever gone to a baseball game or a movie theater or like a concert event where you weren't allowed to bring food in, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like they say, no food, no coolers. But how many of you, show of hands, be honest, you're in church, how many of you maybe snuck some food in anyway? Okay, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this, but you're forgiven, you're absolved. Are you kidding me? Are you telling me that out of 14,000 people, there's only 5 loaves and 2 fish? You know what I think happened? I think there was a whole bunch of people that had food. They're like, "I ain't giving it up. This is mine. I brought this. This is for me. I ain't doing a thing with that." Now, I can't prove that, but I'm just looking at that going, that doesn't make sense to me, does it? See how that works? Here's the second thing that I got out of this. That verse 17, it's still up there. Great. Jesus said, let's go to the next verse. Verse 18. Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." Bring them here to me. I only have 5 loaves. Jesus, this is all I have. I only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." This is what I hear all the time. "Pastor, I would love to give. I don't have enough left over. After I pay my bills, I only have a little bit left over." Or I've heard this before. I don't have the time. Jeff, I'm so busy. I have all these things that I got to get done. And really, I want to do the daily readings, Jeff, but really, I've got like 5 minutes in the morning. I just don't have enough time. Or I've heard this before too. Man, I'm just not smart enough. You know, reading's hard for me. I struggle to read. I don't think about things the same way. I don't have the mental capacity to learn those things. Or how about this? I'm not pretty enough. I'd love to have a husband someday, but when men look at me, they don't see me in that way. I'm just not very pretty. I don't have the face that people love. Or how about this? You know, I'm just a peon at work. I'm just a button pusher. I'm the lowest of the barrel. I can't influence my job. I just got to show up and I just got to do my job. I have no influence at my job at all. Or how about this? I just don't have the position. I don't have the location. I wish if I had a bigger house, if I had a bigger car, if I could do those things. Or how about this one? We're just a small church. Did you know in the kingdom of God there's no such thing as a small church? Did you know that? Well, we only have like 10 or 15 people. Like, what are we going to do? How can we impact it? And if you've ever thought that way, church, if you've ever had those thoughts, because I know I have, I want Matthew 14:18 to be your life verse. And it's on the screen behind us. Let's read it out together. Bring them here to me. Take those thoughts of what you think you're lacking and bring them to your Savior. Bring them out to Jesus and say, listen, bring them to me. Put it in his hands, because in the hands of my Savior, your little bit ends up being a lot. Did you know that as this church, we have everything we need already? Did you know that? Because God can provide that. When we put it in his hands, when we trust him with that, there's so much. And you know probably the rest of the story. Hopefully you'll read it. If you haven't read it, you'll read it this week. They put him in Jesus' hands. And those 5 loaves of bread and those 2 small fish were multiplied over and over and over again. And the disciples went and they spread it out to all those 5,000 men and all the women and children as well. And everyone, the Bible says, everyone ate until they were full. Not just like we had a little bit and I kind of tied me over. Like we're talking Thanksgiving feast. Like you were just stuffed with food when you were done. And after that, there was 12 baskets left over. This is an amazing miracle. Think about the impact this was. The feeding, it's called the feeding of the 5,000, is actually listed in all 4 Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all 4 record that this happened. What a powerful moment. But I don't want you to miss what we talked about at the beginning. Remember what this came out of. This happened directly after, and this is why this is significant in our Act 2, why we're shifting Act 2 to right now, because this is a significant shift in the life of Jesus. This happened right after the darkest moment in Jesus' ministry so far, the murder of John the Baptist. And he came and he healed people and he fed 5,000 people. Here's what somebody needs to hear in this room today. Your greatest ministry might come out of your greatest pain. Your greatest pain can end up being your greatest ministry. That's what happened with my Jesus. And that's one of the greatest miracles. See, God does not cause the hurt and the pain in your life, but God can use that to bless other people. When we put our faith in his hands and we put what we think we're lacking in his hands, he will multiply that and give it in so many cool ways. And church, I wish that were the end of the story. I wish we could just smile and pray and go home and say, isn't God great? Isn't God good? But unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. That's not where the story of the feeding of the 5,000 actually ends. And so in your Bibles, I want you to go ahead and turn to John chapter 6. If you turn a few pages over to John chapter 6. Because see, here's what I need you to understand. At this point in Jesus' ministry, why this was such a pivotal moment in his life and ministry is because to this point, all of the miracles he did were very individual. They were person to person to person. This dramatic event of feeding the 5,000 people was significant because it impacted thousands immediately. And what it did is it completely shifted the conversation of Jesus. To this point, there was a lot of thoughts of, oh, are you the Messiah? Are you the chosen one? Jesus was basically affirming that he was absolutely the Messiah. And in John chapter 6, after this dramatic event, after this healing happens, after the feeding of the 5,000, the people came and they tried to make Jesus king. And if you go to John 6, verse 15, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and to make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. See, if you understand about what the Messiah was to be, the Messiah was to be the Savior of Israel. And what the people thought was, okay, here's the Messiah. Now he's here. Now we can make him king. We can go overthrow Rome. We can have a revolution, and we can reestablish the nation of Israel. See, he's here. He can do that. But the problem with that is, that's not what Jesus came to do. Jesus didn't come to be the Messiah of just Israel. He came to be the Messiah of all the people. And the people didn't understand this. And what developed was kind of, if you want to use the term, a mob mentality of, oh, we're going to grab him. We're going to make him king. It would be the same mob mentality that would eventually kill Jesus. Isn't that ironic? First we want to make him king, and then we want to kill him. Jesus said that's not the way. And so he withdrew to a solitary place by himself. But go down to verse 26. The people found him again. And when they found him, I want you to hear the words of Jesus, because this is so important to what we're going to be talking about. Verse 26, Jesus answered, very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I perform, but because you ate the loaves and you had your fill. I'm going to ask you a question. This is going to kind of hurt, church, but I love you. Why are you following Jesus? Are you following Jesus because of how it benefits you or how it benefits his kingdom? And what happens in John 6, and you're going to be reading this week, so I'm not going to go into it because I want you to read it. John chapter 6 is a beautiful discourse where Jesus engages his followers, the people who said, oh, this is great, you're the Messiah, yeah, you healed us, yeah, you fed us, this is awesome, we're going to make you king. Jesus engages him in a conversation. And basically, if I could summarize for you, Jesus says, listen, you're looking for how this benefits you. You're looking about what does this benefit in you. If I could say it like this, Jesus came to give life to the world, not your world. Jesus loves you. Jesus cares about you. But if I can just help you with something, it's not about you. It's about how you can impact the world. And the people didn't understand this. If we go to verse 33, Jesus is explaining this. This is kind of the end of the conversation. Jesus says, for the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. Jesus, just keep feeding us. Jesus, just keep feeding us. And so there comes a point. There comes a moment where it just becomes from following Jesus to have to deciding what's it going to cost me to follow Jesus. What does it actually mean to be a follower of Jesus? And if you got your note sheet, take them out. And on the back side of this is blank. And you might say, we haven't had anything to write down yet, Pastor. That's on purpose because there's one thing that I want you to write down today. And this is a question that we're going to visit for the next 5 weeks as we continue through Act 2 as far as what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And here's the question. Do you want to use God or do you want God to use you? Do you want to use God or do you want God to use you? Because here's what the people are saying. Jesus, listen, we like this bread. We like you feed us. And not only do you feed us, you go and you take care of my problem are the Romans. God, if you could just get rid of the Romans, all my problems would go away, and you would be the king, and we would follow you, and we would serve you. And Jesus said, that's not why I'm here. I didn't come to save you from your problems. I came to save you from the greater problem, which is the sin that we talked about in our lives. But here's the problem is sometimes I just want God to do what I want. God, help me. God, do what I want. And Jesus said, listen, my mission is so much bigger than that. And verse 35 sets up what's going to happen. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. And whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Jesus said, listen, I came because I'm the bread of life. Now, I want you to understand something because this is so important. In the book of John, as you read the Gospel of John, the story of Jesus, there's going to be 7 I am statements. Jesus says, I am. This is one of them. Jesus says, I am the bread. Okay? There's also 7 miracles that you're going to read in the book of John. This is so important you understand. When you hear the words I am, when Jesus says I am, what he is referring to is back in Moses, when Moses was on Mount Sinai. And he said, the God's name, God, what is your name? God said, the name of God is I am. That's the name of God, is I am. And the Hebrew, we pronounce it Yahweh. We don't actually know how to say it because the Jews were so protective of that. They never said it out loud. So it's written, so we try to pronounce it that way. What am I saying that? When Jesus is saying the I am statements, he's saying, I am God. Okay? I am God. He's making that claim. And when he says, I am the bread, whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Church, I got a question for you, and it might hurt. What Jesus is saying for you at that moment, and he's saying it to you and I, am I enough? Are you okay just getting Jesus? Even if you don't get your way. Even if you don't get the job that you wanted. Even if the girl that you liked is no longer interested in you. Even if the doctor report is not what you wanted it to be. Even if those things still happen to you, is Jesus still enough? And church, that's a really hard question to have to answer. But Jesus says, I'm the bread. Come to me if you're hungry or thirsty, and you'll never be thirsty or hungry again. Can I tell you something? Every single addiction is a thirst. It says, I have a thirst right now, and I need to go to this addiction to quench my thirst because I am thirsty. And you know what Jesus is saying? Am I enough? Can I be the one that quenches that thirst for you? Every sin, everything we hold on to is a way of trying to fill something in our lives that's missing. And Jesus says, listen, am I enough for you? Is it enough just to be me? that I can be there with you. And again, this is something that I want to help you understand, because this is what Jesus is saying to those people. I think he's saying it to you and I today. Would you rather just have the miracles and leave the Jesus? Would you rather just have all the glory and all the healing and all the bread and just have that, Jesus, just do that for me, and then all the other stuff, we're just going to leave it over here? And Jesus said, listen, it's a package deal. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. That's not what I came to do. I didn't come for your benefit. See, it's like sometimes when you see a little baby bird, right, sitting in a nest, and they just have their mouth open, and all they're doing is, feed me, feed me, feed me. Let me help you with something. If you're new to Christianity, if you're new to following Jesus, that is okay. That's exactly where you should be. See, that's why in the early ministry of Jesus, the first 5 weeks that we walked through, Jesus said, okay, just come follow me. Just come follow me. It's okay. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to keep you. I'm going to show. Yeah, I'm going to heal you. Yeah, I'm going to give you some good teaching. Just come with me. Just come with me. But every single follower of Jesus Christ is just like that bird in the nest. Eventually, he's going to say, okay, your turn. And he's going to kick you out of the nest. He's going to say, now it's your turn to fly. But here's the problem. We don't like to leave the nest, do we? We like to just stay and be comfortable and be okay. And Jesus says, no, that's not what I came for. I came because there's a moment where we need to get kicked out of the nest. And can I just say it again? All we need is Jesus. All we need is him. We don't always get the answers we want. We don't always get the results we want. But can I just say it again? All we need is Jesus. So for the next 5 weeks, we're going to walk through this together. Do you want to use God, or do you want God to use you? And every single week we're going to walk through, we're going to talk about something then in your life that it's going to cost you. If you want to be a follower of Jesus Christ, it's going to cost you something. And this is the things that it's going to cost you. But I want to ask you something. You're not giving anything up, are you? Because you're following Jesus, and is Jesus enough? In John chapter 6, I'm going to go down to verse 60. On hearing it, this is one of the saddest verses in Scripture. On hearing this, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? And you know what? They're right. It is a hard teaching. And then John 6:66, isn't that interesting that that's the verse? John 6:66 says this. From this time on, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. If I could just say it this way, they looked at it and they said, listen, I don't know if the cost is worth it. I don't know if I'm able to pay that cost. Go back to my story at the beginning. Every single one of us, no matter what we get, we have to decide, is it worth the cost? And there's something that's going to happen. And here's the thing that I've been struggling with, and I've been in prayer even this morning when I was going through this for the last time. I'm wrestling with this, saying, God, give me the words so I can say this, so I can preach it the way that you want to hear it, church. But here's what I want you to understand. I think with all my heart that some of us see the cost and we don't want to pay it. And just like the disciples at that point said, you know what, Jesus, I can't do it. I've got to turn away. And I don't want this to happen, but I think as we're going on this journey, there may be some in this room, there may be some watching online that said, you know what, I can't pay that cost. I just can't do it. It happened to Jesus too. And if I could just take it a step further, I think that's why in the United States of America, I think that's why we're struggling as a church in this country. When we see our country not getting any better and we wonder why the church isn't helping, I think it's part of the problem is we just like to be comfortable, don't we? We like to have our Jesus on Sunday. We like to do what we want, and then we want to go out and live the rest of our lives the way that we want. Church, that's not how it works. You've got to pick one. Do you want to use God, or do you want God to use you? And to be a follower of Jesus means I say to God, God, I want you to use me. I don't care where it sends me. I don't care what relationship I might need to let go of. I don't care what addiction I might need to let go of. I don't care what sin that I'm hiding that I might need to expose and bring into the light, even though it might be humiliating, even though it might be embarrassing. I don't want to have anything between you and me, God. I just want you. And I'm going to serve you. And I want you to use me, God. And if I could say this, and you're going to read it this week, the good news is there were some that said, you're all I need, Jesus. I don't have anything else. I'm going to stick by you, and I'm going to keep following you. And here's the really good news. They still didn't get it. Because as we're going to find out, these disciples that made the decision to say, okay, Jesus, it's worth the cost, and they stuck with Jesus, they still struggled. And it took them all the way to the resurrection. And so if you'll go along with me through Act 2, because this is going to be difficult, but if you'll walk this road with me as we go through Act 2, and each week we're going to unpack what it's going to cost us to be a follower of Jesus. When we get to the end, it's going to be worth it. Because it cost Jesus everything. When you look at that cross, Jesus paid the ultimate price. And there's nothing that I can do, there's nothing that I could give up that's going to be more than what he gave up on that cross for me. And all he's asking today is, am I enough? I'm the bread of life. Or do you just want the miracles and leave the Jesus out of it? Let's pray. Jesus, I can't imagine what that must have been like for you on that hill that day. Just the roller coaster of emotions that you went through. Learning about John the Baptist's murder and going off and being by yourself, and then getting to the other side of the lake and seeing that crowd. And I don't know, Jesus, if you had hesitancy, but I know that the compassion that you have moved you to stay there and heal him and heal him and heal him. And then Jesus, at the end of the day, when everybody was tired and everybody was hungry and they wanted to go, and you said, listen, I'm going to teach you something. You have all you need right here. And you multiplied the loaves and the fishes. And everyone ate until they were full. And there was 12 baskets left over. And what a great thing, what a great way. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the story. Unfortunately, the people took that as an opportunity to say, hey, this is going to be really good for me. Not only do I get this free food, this is the guy that's going to make all my problems go away. I'm going to latch onto this. And Jesus, you resisted that temptation to fall into that trap of saying, okay, I'm just gonna give you everything you need. You drew a line, as it were, and you said, listen, if you truly want to be a follower of me, do you want me or do you want my miracles? Do you want what you want when you want it, and when you don't get what you want, then you're not okay and you go? Or are you willing to pay the same price? And Jesus, throughout the rest of your teaching, you would talk about the cost of being a disciple and what it means to take up your cross daily and follow you. Even when we don't get what we want. Even when we don't get the recognition we think we deserve. Even when we don't see the results that we think we might need. Are we okay with you? Are you just enough for us? And God, forgive me in my own life when there have been times when you haven't been enough. When I've looked around, or I looked over my shoulder, or maybe I looked in my own heart and thought, oh, I wish I had more, or I wish I had that, or I wish I could. Jesus, forgive us of that. That's sin. Jesus, help us every day to surrender to you at the foot of that cross and say, Jesus, you're enough. Just you. God, I don't want to use you, God. I want to be used by you. And that might cost me something. But no matter what price that I pay, it's not greater than what you paid on that cross. And God, we live in a world that's dying for your followers to recognize that one thing. And that to love and to serve you wherever, whenever, however you call us to. And we thank you for this, God. God, I pray this week as we're reading your word that it would come alive in ways that it hasn't before. I pray for those who've been faithful doing it every day. I pray for those who maybe just get started or maybe you've neglected it. That this week would say, hey, I'm going to be committed to this. And I'm going to try to read that and maybe get caught up, whatever that looks like, God. God, I pray for the discussion groups that come from that too, that we would take that. It might be uncomfortable. It might not be where we want to be. But that we would sit down with brothers and sisters and we would just say, hey, let's look at this together. Let's read it. I have a question about this. God, I pray that by the power of your Spirit, it would just open it in new ways. And that when we come together again these next 5 weeks, we would be prepared for what you have to say, God. Jesus, we thank you for that so much. We ask all these things in the matchless name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.